Krishnapani ji, can we start?
Yes, madam.
Okay.
Yes, madam. Just give me 1 second.
Okay, sure.
O hidden life, vibrant in every atom. O hidden light, shining in every creature. O hidden love, embracing all in oneness. May each who feels himself as one with thee know he is also one with every other. Om Bhuvasvaha. Om Tatsaviturvarenyam. Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi. धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्. ॐ भूर्भुवस्वः. ॐ तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्. ॐ भूर्भुवस्वः. ॐ तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्. ॐ असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतंगमय. ॐ शांति शांति शांतिः.
Krishnapani ji, your video is off.
Yeah, I have deliberately put it off.
Huh.
Just give me some time, I'll put it on.
Okay, sure.
And I think we can start
Yeah.
with this, and the verse number is
47.
47, yes.
Yeah.
So we will take up the verse number 47, and I will read the original. I think we will read verse numbers 47, 48, 49, 50.
Krishnapani ji, there is 47 has a separate commentary,
Okay.
and then 48 onwards, right up to 52 is one commentary. 253
Okay.
is one commentary.
Okay. So then,
we can
then
finish
we will.
47.
Yeah, we'll finish 47 and then we will go to.
Then, yeah, we'll do
Yeah.
all the others together. Yeah. Sure.
Okay. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Maya prasannena tavarjunedam rupam param darshitam atma yogat. Tejomayam vishwam anantamadyam yanme tadanyena na drishtapurvam.
The translation for this: by me in grace and through my self yoga is shown to thee, O Arjuna, this my supreme image, my form of luminous energy, the universal, original, and infinite, my form which is not seen before by any one other than thee. The commentary on this from pages 393 to 394 from the essays on the Gita. The Godhead, in answer to Arjuna's prayers, reassumes his own normal Narayana image, Swakam Rupam, the desired form of grace and love and sweetness and beauty. But first he declares the incalculable significance of the other mighty image which he is about to veil. For it is an image of my very self and spirit. It is the very supreme self figured in cosmic existence, and the soul in perfect yoga with me sees it without any trembling of the nervous parts or any bewilderment and confusion of the mind, because he describes not only what is terrible and overwhelming in its appearance, but also its high and reassuring significance.
Now, in this particular verse, is making it very clear that it is through my grace that I have revealed my cosmic form to you. And it is also through his self yoga. This is a very beautiful term, Atma Yogat. This is through my self yoga. Even for my own revelation, I perform what is called as Atma Yoga. Through that Atma Yoga, you are able to see that form, which is what? Tejomayam, resplendent, luminous. And universal. Vishwam Anantam Adyam. He has used three terms. Vishwam Anantam Adyam. It is the universal, the original, and the infinite. Because sometimes there could be a confusion. How can it be Anantam and Adyam? Adyam is, does not refer to the beginning. It refers to the original form. And this is something which has not seen by anybody before you. Not seen before by anyone else. That form has been revealed to you. He is making two things very clear to Arjuna, that it is on account of my grace, and you are such a privileged person to be the first one to see this form. He is saying this to Arjuna in reply to his prayer, in answer to his prayer, where he is asking him to reassume his original form, original or the normal form. And Sri Aurobindo very beautifully describes this form as the form of grace and love and sweetness and beauty. That is Sri Krishna. That is Sri Krishna. The most graceful, most loving, most sweet, and most beautiful form. It is not necessarily about the physical form which he is talking, but those who have understood what he is, his true nature, they see these four qualities manifest in him. See, one thing which one has to recognize is, when you have a deep sense of affection and reverence and devotion, whatever be the physical form, you will have a very intimate association with it, and it appears very graceful, very loving, very sweet, and very beautiful. Like, for instance, when we see our own children or grandchildren, or somebody with whom we have a deep attachment, deeply associated through love, then that person appears to be the most graceful person. So Sri Krishna had all these qualities, and all those who were truly close to him at whatever level, at the physical, at the emotional, at the mental, at the spiritual, at the transcendental level, whatever be the level, they were able to sense these qualities in him. These are this description is actually not there in the verse. This description, these four terms are used by Sri Aurobindo in his commentary. You don't find them in the original, but he is giving you a new dimension to it, a new, what do you call as, aspect of that divinity even in manifestation. That aspect of divinity even in manifestation. Is able to see that. So he goes on to say that what you have seen is my very self and spirit. What you have seen is my actual very self and spirit, and it is the supreme self figured in cosmic existence. And the soul in perfect yoga with me. Only such a soul can see it. A soul which is perfectly integrated with him. Only such a soul can see this form. This actually, we shouldn't take it literally as a form. Let us not take it as what is normally depicted in pictures and all, giving based on the description that is given. It's not that. It's not. It is indescribable. It is something beyond all descriptions. So one who is integrated in his consciousness can see the infinite nature of it and the presence of everything simultaneously. That's why he says, see, such a person only can see without any trembling of the nervous parts or any bewilderment and confusion of the mind, which Arjuna had undergone. Why is it? Because for Arjuna, it is a vision that is given artificially and temporarily through elevation of his consciousness. Technically, Arjuna is not that perfected soul. He is a human being who is noble. He is Nara with that nobility and that eligibility to be given this temporary vision. That too for a specific purpose. It's not that for just for the heck of it and he happens to be a friend of Sri Krishna that this was revealed to him. No. The usefulness of Arjuna for the, what I would say as the exhausting of the karma of all those who are in the battlefield. He is a very useful instrument. And that is why this form, which appeared to be terrible and overwhelming, but at the same time is high and reassuring significance. Its high and reassuring significance, both are there. The terrible and overwhelming and awesome nature, and at the same time, the very elevated supreme consciousness, which is also reassuring. It is that for somebody who is perfectly integrated in yoga. In fact, integrated and yoga are synonyms. Only such a soul, he says, can see this. Without that, side effects of trembling and fear and nervousness and bewilderment and confusion. So this is the importance of the statement. And as I said, he uses the term prasanna. Prasanna has the derivative meaning of grace, but the literal meaning of clarity. It comes from the word prasanna, comes from prasada. Through my grace and also through the clarity I want to give to you, I am giving you that clarity through my own self yoga, Atma Yoga. And it is for a specific purpose, so that it is in a way reassuring to Arjuna about his action to be taken, about his duty, and also about the certainty of victory. See, in the Mahabharata war, when Karna is trying to, he is engaged in battle with Arjuna, he is trying to, use all his might and power and, you know, send some missiles, astras. But he confesses to his charioteer Shalya and says, I am unable to remember the mantras. I am unable to use these weapons and these missiles and these projectiles and these things because I am unable to recall the mantras. Then Shalya says, all the source of all these mantras is the charioteer of Arjuna. So how the hell can you remember? You cannot remember because you are on the side of adharma. When you are on the side of adharma, the forces in nature also will act against you. They will not allow you to go beyond a certain point. Beyond a certain point, you can't function because the forces of nature are against you because you have invoked such negative forces through your actions which are not dharmic throughout your life. See, your only contention was that here is a person who has elevated a charioteer's son, actually a person who takes care of horses. His adopted father, Karna's adopted father, was a Suta, one who takes care of horses and chariots, even not even a charioteer fully, actually, in a way. That's why he is sometimes referred derogatorily as Sutaputra. He was made the king of Angadesha. And that was the only action because of which he thought that I should be ever grateful to Duryodhana. But that's the problem. The dharma says that if you know the nature of a person to be evil, to be full of adharma, don't accept any benefit from him. Don't accept anything from such a person. See, this is very typical in today's political, domain, and the behavior of people. Whoever is in power, that chief minister or whoever is in power, he bestows some benefits and advantages and posts and privileges on some people, and they are beholden for life. Whatever that fellow does, they will support him. I know several cases. Some person totally unknown to anybody was suddenly brought and given some very plum post, which otherwise he could not even would not even dreamt of or thought of becoming. So he is beholden for life to that chief minister, knowing very well the nature of the chief minister, knowing very well the nature of the person. This is very, very important because In the Yoga Sutras, there is in the Yama Niyama, in the Yama itself, the 5 Yamas, when they talk about Ahimsa, Satya, Steya, Brahmacharya, Aparigraha, Yamaha, Aparigraha, non-covetousness, not coveting anything, because that will be a great bondage. In the, I think it's the Meghadutam, Kalidasa very beautifully says, Yachnya Mokha Varamadhigune Nadhame Labdha Kama. He says, it is better to plead and beg with a great man and get rejected rather than your desire being satisfied by approaching a fellow who is evil. Who is an adhama. You see the point? You approach a noble person for some, you have something, you desire something and you approach a very noble person. Even if he rejects it, it's okay. Never approach a fellow who is evil, who is known to be what he is, known to be a crooked person, a cruel person. Don't approach such a person and get your desire satisfied. But unfortunately, our desires and our temporary benefits are so overpowering, appear to be overpowering, that we don't mind adopting any means or going to anybody for their fulfillment. What happens then? You are beholden for life to him. You are indebted for life to such a fellow. And this happens regularly at small things. See, you have a boss who is a crook. You pander to him because he is the one who is going to give you the promotion. You start pleasing him and pleading with him to bestow promotion to you. And that fellow is also such a crook that every time you meet him, he will remind you, remember, at that time I gave you promotion out of the ton. I could have rejected you, or you did not really deserve it, and I gave you that promotion. He'll keep you reminding so that you should be grateful to him. It's very difficult for see why the path of spirituality is difficult in the worldly setup is because we are simply drifted towards that worldly mindedness, and we consider worldly privileges as more important, which are tangible, which are visible, which are known to everybody, rather than the intangible benefits of leading a spiritual life. So this is the crux of it. But one should understand the nature of things. And this is where Karna fell into the trap. He was overwhelmed when for the first opportunity he offered him the kingship of a territory and the rulership of a territory and made him a king, and he never expected it. But Duryodhana had his own purpose because he knew that if at all there is any true rival to Arjuna, it is this fellow. So I should see that he is on my side. So all these people who were on the side of Adharma were very great people. Karna was known for his great quality of charity. He is called as Dhanakarna. What about Bhishma? What about Dronacharya? What about Krupacharya? What about Ashwatthama? They were not ordinary people. They were people with extraordinary capabilities. But all of them were perished in the war because they were on the side of adharma. So nothing is going, from a worldly point of view, is going to rescue anybody. Only dharma shall ultimately prevail, and only dharma will follow you. Not your spouse or children or grandchildren or properties or assets or whatever one may think are very dear to oneself in life, they are not going to be there. See, the very purpose of this war was not simply some settling some territorial disputes and personal scores. They came into the picture as there is subsequent issues, but the purpose was very clear to Arjuna, to Sri Krishna. It is the restoration of dharma. That is why at one stage he says, I don't require you also. You are also not important for me. Without you also all these things will go on. I have other means. I have 10 other different strategies. I can finish off all these people in so many ways. But each one has his own karma. Each one has got his own, purpose. So that is to be fulfilled. So this is actually a very great lesson for all of us. Let us see, examine ourselves as to how we behave in the presence of powerful people. Power from the point of view of political power and money power and manpower and the supporters they have. Unwillingly also we give importance to them. Why? Because the collective consciousness of the world is acting in that direction. So unless you have that great willpower, you will not be able to overcome this desire to pander to lowly people, even from a worldly point of view, just for the sake of some temporary gain. This is the problem. That is why I said in the Ashtanga Yoga of Patanjali, the very first anga or limb is Yama. Ahimsa, Satya, Asteya, Brahmacharya, Aparigraha. See, the beauty of this is he has used two terms. Asteya. Steya means to steal. Asteya means not to steal. It is not about physically stealing. It is that mental attitude of somehow possessing what somebody else has. Or the psychological attachment. And he also uses the term aparigraha. Parigraha is to accept or take or covet something. So aparigraha is that non-covetousness. Which is very difficult because we see the object, but we don't see the consequences of it. See, I may covet something foolishly, which I am unable to manage. See, if my position is such that if somebody gives me a Lamborghini or a Porsche or there are all kinds of Rolls Royce or something, my capability is such, my limitation is such that I can't even fill fuel into it. So why should I covet it? So you see, the mind has to be understood at its deeper levels, deeper layers of the mind. We should be able to understand and clarify to ourselves that this is not for me and this is not meant for me, and this is something which is going to be a burden for me. Isn't it? See, suddenly if tomorrow somebody comes and gives 1 acre of prime property in Bengaluru city, I don't have money to protect it. I can't even fence it. That itself will run into lakhs of rupees. And later on, if somebody occupies it, I don't have the capability to get him vacated. So from then onwards, I'll have only sleepless nights.
So Ajji,
Yes.
Namaskar.
Yes, sir.
But Karna, when he was offered such a high gift or something from, he never thought about it. What is that behind? And he should have rejected
Sir,
it in a,
no, you and I also would not have thought about anything, sir. Sir, suddenly, suppose something unimaginable is being given to you. See, everybody has a false notion, sir. Ramchandranji, please remember that very, very few people have a very clear understanding of their own capabilities and limitations. Right?
yes, sir.
So what happens if I have an exaggerated, imagination about my own capabilities, which I actually do not have,
Mm,
and I have several limitations which I am
yes.
ignorant of? If somebody offers me a position which requires tremendous capabilities,
Yes.
and if I simply accept it, what will be the consequences of such things? I think there is some WhatsApp message in which he talks about democracy. He says democracy is like two pilots contesting an election, and one fellow says that I have no experience of flying an aircraft, but I promise that whoever elects me, I will always take them in business class. The other fellow says, I know how to fly an aircraft, and I will see that the takeoff and landing are safe and you are safe. But we are so foolish to believe this fellow who says, who will give me business class seat,
Yes.
and elect him.
True.
In spite of the fact he himself is declaring that I can't fly an aircraft. That is the foolishness. That is the myopic vision of the human beings. Their short-sightedness and inability to judge themselves, inability to see with clarity their own capabilities and limitations. So that is the problem. That is where all these practices come into picture. So the best way is aparigraha. Don't accept anything because it's going to add to your karma. Nothing is for free.
Great.
There's nothing like a free lunch, as the American saying goes. Always strings are attached to it. Always some strings or other are attached to it. So you see what happens? This is what one has to recognize first. So coming back to this thing, unless one is truly integrated in the consciousness of that supreme being, which is represented by Sri Krishna in a human form as an avatar, unless we go beyond his human form and see that cosmic form, and be capable of actually seeing that cosmic form through an integration of our own being with him, one will not be capable of actually receiving it also. One will be overwhelmed and terrorized and confused and bewildered, which was the case even with Arjuna. In order to remind Arjuna that you have been given this vision only through my grace, and incidentally you happen to be the first one to see my form, a cosmic form, which was never seen by any other before you. See the privilege that was given to him, Arjuna. So in order to Arjuna to remember these things, that it is only grace and with a divine purpose that this form was revealed to him. Yes, sir. We can go to the, shall we go to the next few verses? Actually, this chapter, we can end it this week or next week. Maybe this will end also. Nothing much. This is all the epilogue kind of thing that is there. I'll read verses 48 onwards. Okay. Binaji?
Yes, till 53.
You can read the commentary. These are elaborations on the same theme. न वेद यज्ञाध्ययनैर् न दानेन न दानैर् न च क्रियाभिर् न तपोभिरुग्रैः एवं रूपः शक्य अहं नृलोके द्रष्टुं त्वदन्येन कुरु प्रवीर. माते व्यथा मा च विमूढभावो दृष्ट्वा रूपं घोरमीदृङ्ममेदम् व्यपेतभीः प्रीतमनाः पुनस्त्वं तदेव मे रूपमिदं प्रपश्य. संजय उवाच इत्यर्जुनं वासुदेवस्तथोक्त्वा स्वकं रूपं दर्शयामास भूयः आश्वासयामास च भीतमेनं भूत्वा पुनः सौम्यवपुः महात्मा. अर्जुन उवाच दृष्ट्वेदं मानुषं रूपं तव सौम्यं जनार्दन इदानीमस्मि संवृतः सचेताः प्रकृतिं गतः. श्री भगवान् उवाच सुदुर्दर्शमिदं रूपं दृष्टवानसि यन्मम देवाप्यस्य रूपस्य नित्यं दर्शनकाङ्क्षिणः. And the 53rd verse. नाहं वेदैर्न तपसा न दानेन न चेज्यया शक्य एवं विधो द्रष्टुं दृष्टवानसि मां यथा.
I'll read the translations. 48. Neither by the Vedic studies and sacrifices, nor by charities and ceremonial rites, nor by severe austerities can I be seen in this form in the human world by anyone other than you, other than thou, O hero amongst the Kurus. 49. Be not troubled, nor get bewildered in mind by seeing my tremendously awful vision like this. Fear-free and cheer-hearted, see thou again that familiar form of mine. 50. Sanjaya said, having thus spoken to Arjuna, Vasudeva showed him again his own Narayana image, assuming again his sweet and serene form. Mahatma, the great soul, consoled that frightened soul, Arjuna. 51. Arjuna said, beholding now thy sweet and serene human image, O Janardhana, I feel collected and in my wits, rehabilitated in my nature. 52. The blessed Lord said, rare and difficult to see is the form of mine which thou hast seen. Even the gods ever desire to have a vision of this form. 53. Neither by the Vedas, nor by austerity, nor by gift, nor even by sacrifice can I be seen in the way in which thou hast seen me. Now, the commentary on this is from page 334, Essays on the Gita. But what then is is the uniqueness of this form by which it is lifted so far beyond cognizance that all the ordinary endeavor of human knowledge and even the inmost austerity of its spiritual effort are insufficient, unaided to reach the vision. It is this, that man can know by other means this or that exclusive aspect of one existence, its individual, cosmic, or world excluding figures, but not this great reconciling oneness of all the aspects of the divinity, in which at one and the same time and in one and the same vision, all is manifested, all is exceeded, and all is consummated. For their transcendent, universal, and individual Godhead, spirit and nature, infinite and finite, space and time, and timelessness, being and becoming, all that we can strive to think and know of the Godhead, whether of the absolute or the manifested existence, are wonderfully revealed in an ineffable oneness.
Now, these verses, two important things are made clear. One is no effort on the part of the individuals will enable them to reach that state of consciousness at which the cosmic form is revealed. There are no means at all. There's absolutely no way one could come to this cosmic vision on one's own. This is one important factor that is reminded. The second thing is, even the devas are eager and anxious and ever desirous of seeing this form, great form, and it remains unfulfilled even for them. And having given to Arjuna this form, the vision of this form, he says, don't be troubled, don't get bewildered, become free of fear and become cheerful, because I am resuming my normal form to which you are accustomed. The importance of verses 48 and 53, they are almost the same. They are talking about the same thing. Is to tell you that whatever one does can only be in preparation and becoming ready for that cosmic vision. See, one has to, the only thing one is capable of doing is to prepare oneself. That's all. Because you are talking about a dimension which is beyond space, time, and causation. So, how can any effort within the field of space, time, and causation yield any result beyond itself? So therefore he says, na vedaihi, na veda yajna adhyayanaihi, not by Vedic studies, nor performing of sacrifices, nor indulging in studies of that Veda, not through charity, not through actions, ceremonial or otherwise, nor through severe austerities, na tapobhihi, ugraihi, severe austerities. Nobody who is from this earth, from this human world, can see this vision. And the same idea is presented in the 53rd verse also, which says, Naham Vedair na tapasa na danena na cha ijyaya. All these things, Veda, tapas, dana, and ijya. Ijya means again sacrifice. Yajna and ijya are synonyms. He has used the same terms earlier also. Veda, yajna, adhyayana, karma, dana, and tapas. Now, normally a question would come, does it mean that doing all these things is a waste? It is not a waste as such. As I said, it is preparatory in nature. One is trying to prepare oneself to be eligible to receive the grace. These things are supportive and complementary in nature, but need not necessarily give you what you desire or what you aspire for, because they are what you aspire for is something beyond the domain in which one is functioning. Whether Veda or Adhyayana or Yajna or tapas or dana or karma, whatever you do, is within the field of the known. As I mentioned earlier, in one of the Upanishads, it's very clearly said that all this is aparavidya. Dve vidye veditavye paracha aparachaiva. There is a paravidya. There is a transcendental vidya. And there is a mundane vidya. And all Vedas come under that category. So what is the nature of this which he is referring to is that you are acquiring the necessary qualifications and eligibility is only one aspect or one dimension of it. There are two other dimensions which one need to remember. One is the grace of the Blessed Lord. The second thing is that grace is also not based on his whims and fancies. That grace descends upon somebody whom the Blessed Lord thinks is ready to serve a higher purpose. So the purpose is also important, which is, as we mentioned in some other context, the unfoldment of the divine plan. There is a divine plan in operation, and one should become an intelligent cooperator in the unfoldment of the divine plan with all those divine beings who are operating there. So grace and purpose are both important. He would not shower his grace on you unless he has a specific purpose of using you for the unfoldment of the divine plan. So one has to prepare oneself for these two things. When it is said in the Bible that not my will but thy will be done. So I am ready to serve and become an instrument for the exercise of your will, which is the divine will, which is always the good will, which is always for the good of the whole of humanity and the creation from a transcendental point of view, from a spiritual point of view. So these are the two things, grace and you are being qualified to fulfill a purpose have to be there. Then only it happens. When he is rejecting all these things and saying Veda, Yajna, Adhyayana, Dana, Karma, Tapas, etc., etc., he is simply reminding you that these are in some form necessary but insufficient conditions. In mathematics, we have this. It is a necessary but insufficient condition. It is required, but you can't say that it is sufficient. So he is emphasizing that fact and reassuring Arjuna again in the next verse, saying that don't be afraid, don't be in that state of fear, be cheerful, because I have revealed myself to you and I have again come back into my form. So this is a form with which you are familiar. And Arjuna also reconfirms and says, now I am samvrutaha, I have collected myself, I have gathered together, I am not dissipated. And sachetaha, I am fully conscious and I have come back into my wits. And you have brought me back into my own nature, rehabilitated in my nature. And Sri Krishna further tells him as to how privileged he is, because what you have seen is very rare and very difficult. Sudurdarshan darsham idam rupam. Which means it is very, very rare and very difficult to see this form of mine, which even the great gods, the demigods, all of them aspire to have a glimpse of it. But they don't get that opportunity. Why? Again, this twin aspect. The Devas may have the grace of the Blessed Lord, but if they don't have a purpose to serve, he need not reveal to them. You understand the point? In this particular contest, in this particular context also, where a war is being waged on the physical plane, it is Arjuna who is more important than all the other Devas. So he has not revealed himself to the Devas also. Though they aspire to have a glimpse of me in this cosmic form, I have not shown them because they don't deserve it, and I don't reveal myself without any purpose, just like that for the heck of it. No. And very beautifully, Sri Aurobindo sums it up very well. He puts a question, what then is the uniqueness of this form? What then is the uniqueness of this form? Because he says, by reciting the Vedas or performing yajnas or study or through charity or tapas, austerities, you only see an exclusive form, a limited form, or a limited aspect of that cosmic vision. You will not have a holistic and an integrated and total vision of that cosmic form. That is what is revealed here. That's why he says, but not this greatest reconciling oneself, oneness of all the aspects of the divinity, in which at one and the same time and in one at the same vision, all is manifested, all is exceeded, and all is consummated. Here you are having a total vision, which can only be partial if you are engaged in the activities of Veda, Yajna, Dana, Tapas, etc. Here you have that oneness, which is all manifested, all exceeded, and all consummated. For here, transcendent, universal, and individual Godhead, spirit and nature, infinite and finite, space and time, and timelessness, being and becoming, all that we can strive to think and know of the Godhead, whether of the absolute or the manifested existence, are wonderfully revealed in an ineffable oneness. So you are seeing everything, the transcendent aspect of the divinity, the universal aspect, the individual aspect, both the spirit and the nature, the infinite and the finite, both space and time and the timeless, being and becoming, all are revealed in their oneness at one stroke. Whether it is the absolute or the manifested existence are wonderfully revealed in an ineffable oneness. That is the beauty of the cosmic vision which Arjuna had. Therefore, all these things are necessary but insufficient to give you the vision. Again, that's why he repeats in both 48 and 53 about Veda, Dana, Yajna, and Tapas. And he also tells Arjuna that you have had this rarest of rare privileges. Don't be bewildered or confused or fearsome anymore, because you have had that vision now. So now he engages him in bringing him back to his normal senses and guide him towards the action to be performed. Shall we do 54 and 55 and complete it here, or postpone it for next week?
Unless there's a longer explanation for these two, Krishna Paniji, because it's 11:33 and people may have questions.
I think because 54 and 55 are important in one way.
Yeah. Then we'll do it next time.
He not only says what is not of any consequence, but very beautifully he says what is of real consequence here.
Okay.
That we will come in 54 and 55. So maybe we will stop here and take some questions or points for discussion. Any points for discussion? Ramchandranji has put a chat here. The cosmic vision to see the God is still in duality. Why the oneness is not emphasized all through? I don't understand this question, sir. Can you elaborate on what you want to say exactly, Ramchandranji?
The all the discussion, it is Godhead is something separate, and the Arjuna is different.
Yes.
and or the humanity is different. And but actually, the oneness part is why it is not brought in. That means it's all in paroksha. Aproksha is not brought in as. How
No,
is
no.
that?
See, there are two things here.
Hmm.
One thing is that this divine vision is artificially contrived and given to Arjuna.
Oh, yeah. Hmm.
So that itself is a limitation. Second thing is the transcendent and unmanifest alone represents that oneness,
Yes, sir.
which cannot be shown to anybody.
True.
Nobody can show anything of that transcendence, oneness, of that great unmanifest aspect of the Supreme.
Yes.
That cannot be revealed. So that see, that's why this is called as Vishwarupa.
Hmm.
It is a Rupa.
It's
It is not
limited.
Arupa. The Arupa alone will have the totality of that oneness.
Hmm.
The oneness of the vision, cosmic vision, which is spoken of here, tries to tell you that nothing is excluded. It is all inclusive. All manifestation is in its best form and its ugliest form is included in this. So it is
Integrated.
still a cosmic vision in the domain of manifestation.
Okay, that way. Hmm.
So when that is there, one cannot truly feel that oneness. You understand the point?
Yes, Sarji. Yes.
So see, this dual aspect will remain like that, because one is this fellow had this vision not on his own.
Hmm.
It was given to him.
For a
It was
purpose.
given to Arjuna for a temporarily and for a specific purpose. That's all.
Divine plan.
Yeah, because he has to fight the war, which he is not ready unless he is given adequate proof that he is going to win.
Okay.
All
That's
of
the
us would
context.
also like to see, all of us want to be in the same situation. No? I want to start something. I want to do something. But there is a lurking fear in me that I may fail in that. But if somebody tells me that don't worry, you are going to be very successful, and gives you a vision of your success also, then you will get a lot of confidence, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
So that is the purpose of Sri Krishna. The strategy is, and I told you in that discussion also, he very clearly mentions that Bhishma, Drona, Karna, and one other person he mentions. No, one other person he mentions in one of these. He says all these four have been already been killed. He was afraid of all these four only.
Hmm.
So very specifically, Sri Krishna says all these, please see, please watch. Please see in this cosmic form that all these four fellows have been killed. Then he gets a lot of confidence. Yeah, now I can go ahead and fight. Once you know the end result, it is easy to fight. No,
Business talk.
for you and me, we don't have that privilege. Yes, sir. Binaji.
Thank you, sir.
Shripaniji, there
Yeah.
is in doing Veda, Dana, Yajna, and Tapas, there is a very strong will required. And I think that the purpose of doing this good activity is that we develop that strong will for the final bhakti that we need for.
No, that will, that strong will
Yeah.
is tainted by benefit for one's own self.
Okay.
Because you perform yajna for a very specific purpose,
Okay.
right? Even if you say it is for the welfare of the world, Your personal desire is to become a channel for the welfare of the world, that the welfare of the world should happen through you.
Okay.
So along with this will, there is this element of selfishness associated with all these things. Whether it is dana or tapas or yajna or adhyana or whatever it is, there is that element in it. So as long as it is tainted with the self, it won't serve the purpose. Such a person can never have the cosmic vision.
Okay. Okay.
That is one. That is very beautiful. That is what is to be recognized. That's why he is emphasizing on these four.
Right. Right.
Because generally, if you see the context and the period at which this was revealed, these four were considered to be very, very important for spiritual evolution. But here, Sri Krishna says they are important in their own way, but are very insufficient.
Correct.
They are insufficient. It doesn't mean that you discard them totally, but you acquire them and know the futility of holding on to them and then discard. See, if I want to be a very charitable person, first of all, I should have something to do charity, no? I can't be a beggar and think of doing charity. When I'm saying beggar, it is from a psychological point of view also.
Yes.
Not only physical point of view, but from a psychological point of view,
Yeah.
I should have something to offer to somebody.
Right.
So there is this element of acquiring first and then discarding later. But if you are very clear about the objective, very clear about the whole thing, then that acquisition is also unnecessary.
Okay.
It is that clarity of perception that is required.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Got it.
Guru Advani ji has posted, very good, sir. I am very happy that you have very succinctly copied, caught the two aspects of restoration of dharma and free of fear. That's what is precisely required, because the whole of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad talks about it. Abhayam, Abhayam by Brahma. It ends on that note of becoming totally fearless. Because fear is a very, very dominant factor in human life. And it is so dominant that we have got used to it. We have got terribly used to it, and we don't see the dominant nature of fear. We take it for granted. Sabko dar lagta hai, sab डर के आगे जीत है, whatever thing you talk, you take it for granted that it is there, but that is the problem. Unless you cross over, you will not become free of fear.
Very true. Very true.
That is what is important. So thank you very much for very beautifully capturing the two essential aspects of restoration of dharma and being free of fear. Yes, sir. Anybody else? Umesh ji?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
To observation one,
Yeah.
in this chapter, by showing the cosmic form, it is frightening, it is fearful.
Yeah.
But God per se, or that supreme intelligence, is full of love.
Yes.
So was the love aspect not displayed and conveyed and convinced the Arjuna?
No.
That is one.
See the love. Yeah. Okay.
The second is about the grace.
Yeah.
That we spoke about grace and purpose.
Yeah.
Correct me if my understanding is wrong. Grace is omnipresent. It's always there. It is the receiver as individual who has to go beyond the limitation and be a good receiver of the grace. Because the God, he himself declares that no one is dear to him, or no one is not dear to him. So that means his love, his grace is equal to all.
Yeah.
And as far as purpose is concerned, the purpose for every individual is to evolve and to realize that it is the same supreme intelligence which operates through him.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yes, please.
Yeah. Now coming to your first one. Sir, what brings about a transformation in any human being? What could be the trigger for transformation?
Well, trigger could be either the realization of love.
This is in respect to your first question.
Yes, either through the love
No
realization.
amount of love is going to trigger it. Just remember when one is in ignorance, no amount of love can really trigger transformation unless one realizes that the whole of existence in manifestation is through limitation, and limitation is the cause for sorrow. And you also see, if we examine our own life, the moments of transformation are when one is deeply disturbed, when one is in deep sorrow or grief or in trouble. One accosts failure, one is disappointed in life. So the presence of all these things which are considered to be negative, they're actually not negative. It is negative from our perspective because we don't want them. But the fact of the matter is they are what are actually present in life. You take anybody's life, the moments of ecstasy, the moments of happiness, the moments of a beautiful experience which is out of the world is a rarity. The moments of sorrow, grief, disappointment, troubles, tribulations, disturbances, they are more in one's life, anybody's life, isn't it? That is the reason why the Buddha said that the first noble truth is dukkha. What is evident in all manifestation of life is dukkha. It's not a pessimistic aspect. It is a consequence of limitation. You can come out of dukkha only by transcending limitation, which is ajnana, which is avidya. That limitation, in other terms, is what we are calling as avidya, or that primordial ignorance. So the very nature of manifestation is that when one is operating under limitations and in a deluded state of mind, where one is fragmented, one is partial, divided, and when there is division, there is conflict. The human consciousness is what? Human consciousness is the me and the not me. That is the division. Once the division becomes a reality to us, the consequences of it also are real to us. The first consequence of division is conflict. And conflict can only lead to sorrow and nothing else. So we need to understand the nature of that division, the nature of that conflict, and nature of the limitation that in which we are acting. So we need not address dukkha. We need not actually start working on the sorrow and suffering in us, because that is imminent, that is always there, and that is going to be there unless you address this conflict in you. So that is also manifest in the cosmic vision. The cosmic vision shows you in an integrated form the best and the worst, as I mentioned earlier. But what creates a greater impression on the mind? Is it the best or the worst? It is the worst because we are tuned to that. See, there are two ways of doing it. See, the reward and punishment method. Suppose somebody comes, you are in a very powerful position. You are a very senior officer, and you are a very powerful person in that position. Now, a fellow, a cruel fellow who is actually an evil force, he comes and says, you have two options. Either you take this money and do my work, or I am going to kill you and get it done by somebody who comes in your place. Which is more, awe-inspiring or creating a motivation for you to do work? You may say, no, I'm not. You are not a money-minded fellow, and you say, I reject money. I don't want money. The alternative is that I'm going to kill you. Which causes more disturbance? I don't want to lose my life. So the threat to life, which is the ugly side of the cosmic vision in one way, is a much more powerful and motivating factor than the offer of money to you. So now the mind will think in a very crooked way and says, see, I don't have much option. So one person may decide, I don't want your money and I don't want to be killed. I'll do whatever you want and get rid of it. That's one way. The second way is that I'll take the money because anyway you are going to kill me if I don't do it. Why should I lose this? I'll take this and do your work and do it. But there is a third dharmic way, simply saying, I will relinquish this post. I resign from this post and go away. You do whatever you like. So I will go away from here. I will opt for a position or a place which is absolutely insignificant, and that's what happened also. See, Mrs. Lalita John told me about her own life. When her bosses wanted her to do something wrong, she said, I will not do it. The best I can do is you send me on leave, or I'll go on leave. You post any fellow comfortable to you in that place and get your work done. Because I cannot confront you. She herself told me that she came and confessed it to Ma Manishi and said, I am thinking of quitting this job. Then Ma Manishi said, no, you are placed in that job to do certain things. So don't be disheartened by these things. So you see, dharma will ultimately prevail, and whether you are holding on to that dharma or not is what is important. See, the human factor of fear and greed go together. There is fear and greed. They are so closely intertwined, and on that, the whole of the society plays a game on that. That carrot and stick method, the reward and punishment method, this fear and greed, instilling fear and tempting you through your own greed. See, that is why Jiddu Krishnamurti said, The society is an immoral society. The whole society is an immoral society. There is no morality at all. There cannot be any morality when it is operating in this sphere. A respectable society is an immoral society, he said. And we are all contributing to that. So what impressed Arjuna was the terrible side of it, because he was not used to see that integration of the best and the worst in that cosmic form, which is the uniqueness of it as mentioned by Sri Aurobindo in his commentary.
So in that case, just little interpretation. Is it Arjuna's limitations to interpret what the vision that he saw
Yes.
as fearful and frightening, whereas in reality, it is what it is?
Yes, it is what it is. And again, remembering Ravi Ravindra, it's not a question of understanding, it's a question of withstanding.
Yes, that's right. So it was Arjuna's withstanding which did not manage to keep him. He started trembling, etc. But it was his withstanding power was not sufficient.
Yeah. No, Ramchandranji is mentioning a reverse case also. When there was some issue in his office, he waited for the boss to go on leave, during which time he exercised his powers and got the right contract to be issued to the right person. But when the boss came back, he simply threw him out from that post. So you should be prepared for so many things. So you should be prepared for so many things. See, these things are going to happen. So coming back to your second question.
Okay.
What was your second question?
About the grace and the purpose.
Yes. About the grace and the purpose, as I mentioned, the grace is everywhere, no doubt. But you are not attuned to it. Right? Even if you are attuned to it, the point I want to emphasize is that you should be attuned in such a manner that you should serve a purpose. You have to serve a purpose. The grace comes uninvited, but it doesn't come without a purpose. You understand the point? So you have to become eligible in the eyes of that divine manifestation in that Godhead for serving a very specific purpose in the unfoldment of the divine plan. What I am trying to emphasize is they go together. You are right in saying that the grace is ever present. It is always there, yes. But how does it matter? When I am not tuned to it and my receiver is damaged or my receiver is not functioning, that is where all these things come. Veda, yajna, jnana, karma, dana, tapas, all these things are important in that context only. But
yes, I recall your very fundamental statement that it is all about purification.
Yes. So that is what it is. So they are meant for a limited purpose. You can't expect the unlimited to just come down just like that. It has to serve a purpose. So you should be always ready to serve his purpose. You've got to be ready and serve a purpose. Don't think that if you are not being utilized, that you are useless. Your time has not come. The right time for the right person to be used in the right context has not come. And they don't waste energy. In the theosophical literature, it is very clearly mentioned by Leadbeater, saying that the Mahatmas or the masters cannot afford to waste even an iota of their energy without a purpose. So what they do is, They will use the best person available at that spot for the time being, for that specific purpose only. For us, it may be that this fellow is a very useless fellow. This fellow is a crook. This fellow is... See, that is how they become politically powerful. A chief minister doesn't become a chief minister just by chance or accident. He serves a divine purpose in his own way. And he happens to be the best fellow to hold that post at that point of time to do that particular job. That's all. All other things are immaterial. Because we are all fulfilling each other's karma. One's own karma is so interlinked, so closely linked with everybody. That is why there is a saying that we should always wish for the welfare of the ruler. Swasti prajabhyah paripalayantam nyayena margena mahim mahisha gobrahmanebhyah shubhamastu nityam lokas samasta sukhino bhavantu. The full shloka, very beginning says Swasti prajabhyah paripalayantam nyayena margena paripalayantam. The rulers, let us give our best thought to the rulers, whoever they are. See, they have come through a process, isn't it? It's an electoral process, whether good or bad, with its own weaknesses and strengths and whatever it is. There is some working system, isn't it? Some system is better than no system, isn't it? So some system, some working system with all its weaknesses is there, and somebody has come into a particular position. Now, if you go on cursing that fellow will become an evil force and he will start doing evil only. So we are adding our negativity to him and doing it. Instead of it, let us add our positivity to him. Because he is in a position with the stroke of a pen, he can change the fate of so many people. Isn't it? Suddenly here in Telangana state, with a stroke of the pen of the chief minister, he increased the retirement age from 58 to 61. Lakhs of employees are happy because they got 3 years extension. So you see, so there are so many who are benefited by it. There are so many who retired last month and couldn't get the benefit. So you see the whole drama. You see it as a drama, then you will know the beauty of the whole thing. I think, sorry, we have exceeded and we have almost crossed 12 o'clock.
Thank you so much.
It's important to dwell on this.
Thank you.
Okay. So we will close this and Sajni ji.
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, madam, you are there. Please do any announcements and also the Loka Samasta.
Thank you so much, Krishnapani ji. And announcements we have is this evening, we have Vani ji's talk. So I'd like everyone to tune in. It's really nice. And that is at 6:30 this evening. So with that, let us now chant the Loka Samasta. And as we know, the COVID situation is really, situations are bad. So let us really send out a lot of love, hope, faith to all the people on the globe. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka sukhino. Loka samasta bhavantu.
Thank you. Thank you. So we will end this here and we'll be meeting again on Sunday at 10 o'clock for Atma Bodha. Thank you.